being a professional dungeon master. I have my world on me at all times. Your main character says a prayer. To whom and why? That gives you a really awesome narrative device for making sure that your world is dynamic.
Welcome to the Bright and Ambitious Writing Podcast. I'm your host, Kailey Bright.
And I'm the producer of the show, Joel Seymour.
And this is Chloe.
Hi, Chloe. Do you have anything to say?
Something insightful. Good job.
Good job, Chloe. Thank you, Chloe. Now, normally this show focuses on how to write books, but stories can take a wide variety of forms, including Dungeons and Dragons. No one knows this better than our guest today.
Noah Woodyard, who is a professional dungeon master. He does this for a living.
He owns Polaris Gaming in Greenwood, South Carolina, and he has been perfecting his craft for years now, including his live play podcast, The Bastard Children of Everil.
You know this man means business. Imagine that you are so confident in your world building that you have it permanently etched onto your body.
Yeah, no, that's the kind of commitment that he has with his world.
Him and the coordinator at Lander University contacted me. So I did a presentation on how to publish, which is something we've talked about on this podcast. And for this episode, I thought it'd be really nice to highlight Noah's presentation, which is all about how you make a realistic world.
Yeah, it was so incredibly helpful to understand what all you need in order to get a fully fleshed out world. And it made this thing that felt impossible to me feel so easy to approach. If you have ever wanted to write fantasy and wanted to develop a magic system and just didn't know where to start or how to make it all click together, this episode is for you.
Honestly, I think you can even expand that to different genres. People who are wanting to write sci-fi or historical fiction, especially alternative historical fiction, you're going to need to have that kind of groundwork.
And then again, obviously, for anyone who's just wanting a opportunity to flesh out your own world with tabletop RPGs, this is going to help make sure that people actually get engaged into your world, are asking the questions that you have spent so long trying to figure out yourself, and how to get people excited to discover what's next.
Hello, how are you guys doing? My name is Noah Woodyard. I have the pleasure of owning Polaris Gaming here in Greenwood, South Carolina. I also have the even larger pleasure of being a professional dungeon master for D&D. It is literally the way that I pay my bills. I love it so much. I have my world on me at all times. If you play in one of my games, this is where you're going to be playing. The tattoo on my arm is the semblance of the better part of me living within my world for the better part of 20 plus years. So today my discussion with you guys is going to be about how to create a very much so living world where you guys can really amplify your stories as to where it's a captivating things for either your players within it's a D&D one-shot or a short story or a novel like what I am writing as well. Taking a passion and moving it into a way that actually pays your bills is truly an awesome thing, and writing and sharing your story with other people is just one of the greatest privileges one can have, right? All right, so building a literal living world. Just to go ahead and get started here, what do you need for your living world? Why are you doing it? It all depends on what it is that you're trying to do, right? Are you doing it for Dungeons and Dragons? Are you doing it for a novel? Are you doing it for a short story, etc.? All of it boils down to the fact of you're trying to bring out that lovely part of your personality and showing your creativity and sharing it with others, right? Good. You guys are silent. That's fine. Whichever the reason, it comes down to what are you attempting to do? And there are certain things that you can do that makes it more promising to others or more inviting to others as they go through. If it's your novel, you want it to be a page turner, right? If it's a D&D session, you want them to come back day in and day out, always trying to figure out who the murderer is. Unfortunately, Kailey and I suffer from the same thing. We always know who the murderer is. There's never a surprise. We've done this enough. So the real test is seeing if you can get other people who aren't within that scope to still keep guessing, right? This is how you make it as real as what you can. All right, so key features of most worlds, you're going to need a map. You're going to need a Pantheon. You're going to need the history of your world. You're going to need the people and a name. Those are your 5 things. Think about every civilization. Move it down. Think about Greenwood. Think about South Carolina. Think about Lander University. Each one of them has the exact same thing. Lander University has a map. It has a Pantheon. It's your president. The history. All of Lander's many, many decades of history. The people. Look at every individual club. Each one of them fundamentally shapes what Lander University stands for. Lastly, the name. Why are we Lander? Well, we're certainly not the senators. Thank you, senators. Yes, absolutely. So all of these things end up making what Lander University actually is, or Greenwood, or South Carolina, or the United States, or globally, and then even further universally if you go into the science fiction or real science version of it. So you have your map. Where is your world? Your Pantheon. What is needed throughout it, etc. Right? Let's start with your map. So, what do you want your map to show? My map specifically right here, this is my world map. Unfortunately, this is only a small portion of it because my map continued to expand as I kept doing more and more and more things. It doesn't have to, but it's a good thing that it actually does. So, you could do any of these different sites. And again, you can break it out however much you want to. There comes a point in which where you zoom in so much that you actually get a street level view and then a 3D modeled view of specific streets. That's how I started with D&D whenever it was possible to do in Google SketchUp, and it was lovely. But you can dive down so much, and each one of those has a very important purpose, right? So, your geography of your map. This is probably one of the most fundamental things that you can do with your map as a whole. The geography of your map shapes the people that live there. Are you going to be in a desert? Great. There's going to be water issues. Are you going to be by a river? Guess what? Those people aren't going to have those water issues. As soon as you can figure out where your geography meets where your people groups are, that's phenomenal. If you think about any other real location in the world, all of the people groups that directly surround it are all based on the geography that exists, right? So how does your geography change or influence and then shape? You have to be the determiner of that. Look into the real world history of things. See how much all of that can shape, however, familiarize yourself as much with the real world if you want to create a fictional living world, right? Your Pantheon. There are so many different religions. So whenever I was a student here, I was an English major with minors in philosophy and religion. There's a ton of different ones. Ask anybody how they personally view or see the world and their religious standpoint in it. Once again, it's a thing that shapes the people. And beyond it shaping the people, it also shapes your enemies. If you're doing a D&D one-shot, or if you're doing anything in a novel, that religious aspect of it, there's a whole reason that the Crusades, just in actual, Earth history or whatever, focuses so much on, we're going to go into the religious aspect of it and we're going to try and justify it Judeo-Christianity. It's fine. No, it was a money thing, but it's kind of a mix of both. You hear multiple sides of it. As many of those different religions, as many of those different gods of what you can see, even maybe not so gods, because you have some of these that all is God, or atheism, or polytheism, etc. It's like, oh, well, your gods can only do so much. We're going to find a justification for it for selfish means. Human nature is flawed. It's unfortunate, but it's true. So your pantheon can look like any of these. A monotheistic, henotheism, polytheism, pantheism, atheism, etc. There's actually many, many more. Those are just the major types. So if you're trying to create a living world, you're going to have a group of people who believe this, and then a much larger group who could have this, or vice versa. It doesn't matter. All you have to do is make sure that that's an established thing when you're writing, even if it's a short story. The best example is that your main character says a prayer. To whom? And why? Where are they located? And why? Where are they coming from, right? Yeah, your pantheon structure, all of that sort of fun stuff. Where do people go when they die? I'm not getting into all that. That's a lot for, admittedly, this short amount of time. What religions or religious orders abide by the principles that are set up by the region specifically. You're going to have specific region-specific things. You're going to have deities in the desert who absolutely make sure that it rains once a year. If people are good, you can throw that in however it is that you would like. And that gives you a really awesome narrative device for making sure that your world is dynamic, right? All right, now we're moving on to history, people, and names. Ready?
Yes.
Y'all are so quiet. Come on. Y'all got this. All right. I'm not going to do a recap. Y'all are good. All right. History. Where do you begin with writing your history? The way that I started with my world was by writing a timeline. My timeline stretched over 3,080 years in the first draft. Since then, I have now done a 3,080-year draft for each one of these core 8 continents that are right here in my world map. Each one having different instances of where it is that they tie into each other from continent to continent, right? So an event that happens up here in Lux and Solda affects something down here in Nox and Lunda, right? It's good to have that continue to branch down inward. It's the same as doing a map, because what is history but a map of time, right? Good. All right. So are you focusing on one group of people? Or are you focusing on your big bad, if you're writing a novel or novella, etc.? And when does it begin? Who is writing your history? Who is writing your history? Is it going to be the people who won every single victory? Is it going to be oral tradition that's just passed down generation to generation? Or is it going to be from a non-biased perspective who writes history books, and then you see that there are some faults there within as well? Makes a lot of sense whenever you look at major historical events that there are certain ones that will in fact be skewed. How much are you adding into it that is specifically within your magic system or your creation myth? Both of which are incredible things that you have to think of if you're writing within fantasy specifically. Your creation myth, each one of those different religions that we talked about before, all of those are going to have a different creation myth. For this, any much so of how they interact is going to be a part of that magic system. Do you gain it organically from just pulling energy away from the trees, and then you have a bunch of magic users who are standing in an undead forest because they sapped everything out? Or are they pulling it from a deity? Are they pulling it from somewhere else? All of that goes into your history then of who's manipulating what. Boils down to this. Someone wants something badly, and they're having difficulty getting it. To what extent are people willing to go after what it is that they want? That's the fundamental of every written novel, every written piece of literature. Think of Harry Potter, think of The Lord of the Rings. Someone wants something, and they're having difficulty getting it. How do they achieve? Right? What makes your history dynamic? Yeah, that's perfect. Versatile and unique to the people when you have exist in your world. Figure out what it is that your timeline is going to do. Figure out what your time frame is. Are you focusing more in the medieval era? Are you focusing in a sci-fi? Or are you focusing in a weird version of both? A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away where they have technology that we can't even understand, right? Star Wars reference. Come on. Gosh. No. When in doubt, make your history believable. That means referencing back to actual history. Make your history influential. Have those events that happen in one continent or in one city spread to knowledge of your main character or to your players in different aspects, right? And then make your history have other impacts that will affect how people view and believe your world. That could be even you guys having some sort of horrendous crisis that potentially challenges your readers or at least your consumer of your story. Think about how things could have gone differently, how things could have been be more than bold in breaching that sort of thing. All right, your people. 7 components of what constitutes a people group. This is very simple. If you've taken any sort of cultural history class or whatever, this should be a no-brainer for you. However, it does extend very deeply into what it is that you write. Your ethnicity, location, economics, religion, history, technology, and self-identity. I'm not going to spend too much time going through all of this. This is just going to be a rattle through here. So, ethnicity, what are the races or species that exist? Location, where are these people located, come from, or could go? Economics, poverty level, wealth of a nation, their history with money. They could be very bad at managing money. They could have been robbed 1,000,000 times. They're going to be poor at this point. Even if they have significant amount of resource, guess what? They're now a big target. It's like oil in Iran. Religion, what type of pantheon do they serve? Right? Right. History. What are their people's history? Where do they come from? Where do you go? Thank you. Technology or magic. Magic is technology that we don't understand, right? That's a common enough phrase. So what is the extent of how they have advanced their technology? Do they have access to magic or to technology? And then their self-identity. What are these components are used for your people groups to identify themselves specifically from others? That's the big thing. Sure, you can say you come from one location, but you're based here. Or you can say that you're a magic user here, but that magic isn't accepted here. So that self-identity is where do they find a self-importance within everything else that they do. All right, name. My favorite one, our last one, I promise. Why do we care? The name of my world is BARDUN, UUNBARDUN, except it has some dots and lines. BARDUN. Un actually comes from Celtic Gaelic, meaning the first, and then Bardun is a much different lines following down of the ground. So the actual name of my world is the ground in which we walk, or the first ground, meaning the ground in which we walk, right? And that has been the case since I was 7 years old. I guarantee you I wasn't that smart back then. I promise you as such. It serves as a focal point. It gives nomenclature for specific things. I mentioned 2 continents already on my arm. Lux and Solda, Nox and Lunda. Lux and Solda. Lux, meaning? Light. Nox? Dark, exactly. The way that my world is actually shaped, it's shaped like a spinning top. Lux and Solda is at the top. It's always facing the sun. Nox and Lunda is hidden by the shadow because it's in the shape of a top. It's always hidden by the shadow of the rest of the continents that circle all the way around. Nox, it never sees that light. The only way that it gets light is by moons, right? So having even that sort of nomenclature, guess what? I just told you in 4 sentences that there's a history of why the map makes sense. Right? If you can figure out where those names go to how it is that you want your world to be perceived, of how you want your story to be perceived, it makes a lot more sense. Also, Lux, Nox, tropes. Go with them. Tropes are good. They serve a purpose. They're tropes for a reason. Don't shy away from them. If you want to be extra creative, by all means, just know that it may isolate certain, especially within a, young adult audience, or even younger, specifically if you're doing children's novels or whatever, that could be a separator. Or if they see it, they're going to feel smarter because they knew Lux, light, Nox, dark. What all needs a name? Places, items, conditions, times. There's also calendars that you can make. There's all sorts of different flora and fauna. I have a master list of flora and fauna for each one of my different continents that my players get to see day in and day out, that changes frequently as well, based off of what it is that they interact with. All right, what do you want the names to mean? We just discussed. What do you want the origins of the name to come from? Perfect. And what is the history of the name? That's awesome. Names change drastically over time. That's the other thing. So the original name of my world is Uwing Bardwin, and that is an old Bardwinic or ancient Bardwinic name for the actual world itself. That's the difference, is that you can give everything that you say can always be retconned from historical perspectives. And that's a really good blessing that we have of being authors or writers, is that you can change things on the fly. And you can say, oh, well, yeah, that's what the older people used to call it. That's awesome. Good for them. Yeah. Other than that, Earth has had many variations over thousands of years. Again, it's just a tried and true thing. One of the only, probably the biggest piece of information or advice I could give to anybody who is creating their own world within their own setting, make sure that you do your research on how our world actually works. If you can think of it, I can nearly guarantee you it has, in fact, happened. Now, you can put an incredible fantasy spin on it. The crisis of 13,050 happened in my world in the continent of Salin Parvati in the year 2013. The crisis of 13,050 people were jettisoned off to a poison moon, one of the 3 moons of my world. Oh no, they were sent to their death. 13,050 people. That's a real thing that has also happened in Earth. It's very unfortunate. However, if you want your world to be believable, introduce those gritty and not so kind elements. Also, introduce the fun, introduce the joy. Let there be light in the forest. Let there be a grove where there's no evil that can touch it. Let there be the Shire. Right? All right. I think that's all that I've got there.